Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. And today we'll be talking about the Rise of Skywalker box office because we now have the official second weekend estimates, and things are just looking very good for Star Wars. There's really no way to spin it, as we've been saying a lot lately, because there really is no way to spin it. Right now, as of now, it has made $724 million in the overall international worldwide box office, which to me is a bit surprising. I did not think that it would come in nearly this high by the end of its second weekend, but we cannot ignore the numbers that we have in front of us. This number has a chance to go up a little bit because I don't think we have all of the countries reporting yet on their official box office estimates, but right now this is a pretty good indicator to go on, and this does actually help us out pretty well to figure out what kind of money this film is going to make. Even if it is an extra $20-30 million, the numbers really won't change all that much as far as the projections actually go. And so in order to find those projections, let us go to my handy dandy Excel sheet that you have seen featured on this channel for the last several videos. It is a very good way, I think, a visual aid to help explain the box office and how I'm getting the numbers for the box office, etc. So as you can see, we can now plug in some numbers. So I was able to plug in this $724.7 million for the 2-week total, which means I can now officially make projections for what this movie will actually make by the end of its run, which means that the minimum projection, the very least that this film will make, is $1,035 million, and the maximum that this film can make would be $1.4 billion, with the most likely outcome being somewhere around $1.2 billion, which would still come in underneath The Last Jedi. And based on these current estimates, it is still indeed tracking underneath The Last Jedi. When you actually compare it to the other, when you take the domestic totals and you compare that to they used to have one here. I don't know why they decided to take that away, but let's go ahead and pull this up. All right, cool. We now have here, we can say the second Sunday total is $20 million, so a little bit higher than what the numbers were for The Last Jedi, but the second Saturday fell well below what the second Saturday was for The Last Jedi. And as you can see, $361 million is the current domestic total for The Rise of Skywalker, where at the same time in history, The Last Jedi was at $368. Now, keep in mind that The Last Jedi is about to hit some pretty heavy numbers with a $27 million Monday and Tuesday. Because remember, this film, Last Jedi, came out at December 15th, meaning that it had a full 10 days before Christmas came around, and it got that Christmas holiday bump. It is now about to get that Christmas holiday bump where The Rise of Skywalker has already gotten that, meaning that these numbers for the Monday and Tuesday are likely going to fall underneath what these numbers are. And is there a world in which that does not happen, in which it makes more? Absolutely. But just based on history and based on the way that the box office seems to be going and the fact that it did the best for Christmas and the day after Christmas, we're looking like this film is going to continue to pull away as far as making less than what The Last Jedi made, meaning the film will likely come in underneath The Last Jedi, which actually lines up very well with the projections. Remember that The Last Jedi made around $1.3 billion, and so for this film to make around 1.2 would make not just sense logically, but also would seem to fit the current numbers as they stand. So the max projection, $1.4 billion. Some might say that's a very large number. What does this number actually mean if maybe you're new to the channel? So let's assume that this number here in the 2-week total column is 70% of the entire total. If that is the case, meaning it's made 70% of its entire box office run in the first 2 weeks, which is very, very high. Most films don't do that. Most big budget films tend to make 60% or around 60%. If it was 70, though, that means that the number would have to be $1,035 million, because what is $724 million out of $1 billion or $1,035 million? Around 70% or so. Now let's assume that it has one of the greatest third, fourth, fifth weekends of all time and ends up making 50% more than it already has made. Well, then you double this number, right? And that would get you to $1.4 billion. Now, most films don't double it. Most big budget films especially, they make all this crazy money in the first 2 weeks, and then people have already seen it, and so less and less people see it. You see massive drop-offs, and yeah, it's made a lot of money so far, but less people are likely to see that, which is why you're more likely to find around a 60% number for those first 2 weeks. And if that were the case, if this number here, $724 million, is 60% of its entire total, that means the entire total would have to be $1.2 billion, right? So it looks like this film is indeed going to cross the $1 billion mark. I don't see a world where it doesn't cross $1 billion. Again, some people might not want to hear that, but let's just be honest for a second. That is what the numbers are currently telling us right now. But what does that mean for the overall profitability of the movie? Because whether it makes $1 billion or not, is one question. Whether it makes money or not is another. And as you all know, or if you've been watching the videos, the budget that I currently have for this film is set to be around $350 million. Could it be more than that? Absolutely. Could it be less than that? Absolutely, which is why I think that this is probably a pretty fair, and I would say on the conservative side as far as estimates go for what the budget likely is. If it was a $350 million budget, that means with marketing, assuming the 50% standard total. So if you take 50% of the budget and add that in addition to the budget, that's how you get the total marketing cost. So that would put this number at $525 million, meaning that that is the total cost of the actual movie. And so if the number is $724 million, as it is today, and a studio only gets around 60%, and for Disney, it makes roughly around 65%, actually, in some instances, of the total box office, of its entire box office receipts, that would mean that the number is currently at a negative $90 million. So it's currently in the red. It has not made its money back if all of these numbers hold out. However, because the film will likely hit that billion-dollar total, it means that by the end of its run, it will likely break even. So let me just go ahead and show you for a second. Let me just go ahead and copy this number real quick, but let's assume that it makes that minimum number. Let's assume that it makes that $35 million number. That would mean, I missed a zero there. That will definitely change the number by a fair amount. So let me add a number there, add a zero there. Oh, I still missed a zero. And there we go. That's why we do this thing live. So let's assume it makes the minimum. It would have to, therefore, make a $96 million profit. So even if it comes in at that minimum projection that I have, it is still profitable by a fair amount of money. Now, I know some people are going to argue saying, oh, the budget's actually higher than that number. And, oh, it's not going to make that. It's somehow still going to come under $1 billion. Really, there is no chance of that anymore. It's a 99.9999% chance that it reaches at least this number in the minimum projection category. And if you want to find out how I got to these numbers and these percentages, go ahead and look to every previous Star Wars movie and every previous big budget film and look at the first 2 weeks internationally, worldwide totals, comparing that to their final totals. And you'll find that almost every single time it falls in between a 50% or a 70% number. So sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower, but it always falls in that range, which is why this range is pretty much, for lack of a better term, gospel at this point in time. It's going to fall somewhere in between. Now, can there be times in which it's wrong, that it comes in underneath the 70% or comes in higher than the 50%? Absolutely. It's just not likely at this point in time. And we're going to be honest here. As I always try and say on this channel, I am as honest as I possibly can. I don't spin things as some people like to claim that I do. I just look at the numbers and give you my opinion on those numbers based on the research that I have done. Am I a mathematician? No. Am I a math expert? No. I'm just a dude who is a regular everyday high school teacher who loves talking about movies, who loves talking about the box office. I'm fascinated by this stuff, and I decided to, hey, you know what? No one else is really breaking this down on a weekly basis or even on a daily basis, and I think some people might be interested in it. So these are the numbers that I came up with, and don't ever take my word for it. Go ahead and do your own research. If you're finding different things, let me know. If you have a different methodology, please let me know that as well. But this is how I make the most sense out of it. And if you are interested in the box office, though, and you want to see daily updates to the box office, check out the website I've been talking about for the last couple of days, ombreviews.home.blog. I now have a new tab that specifically is for the box office tracking. It shows you the exact same Excel sheet that I've been showing, and I update the box office total column every single day. That way you can see what the current loss gain is, what the current box office is, and also what the overall projections are. In fact, you can look to older films like Joker here. So Joker had made $543 million by the second weekend. So therefore, the minimum projection was $770 million. The maximum was 1.087. And where did the film end up? 1.060. So it did not reach the maximum, but it definitely made closer to double the amount of money in after the first 2 weeks, which is very rare. But when you look to Joker and see how popular it was and how the legs on that film just continued to make money after money after money, it makes a lot of sense that the film was able to last so long. And so you can compare all the numbers that I've done, and you can see that every single number that you find in the total box office will fall into that range because of the way that these numbers work. So anyway, let me know what your thoughts are on this. Let me know what your thoughts are on the current box office, and do you think that The Rise of Skywalker will come in underneath The Last Jedi? I would say it's very likely at this point in time that the overall worldwide box office will come in under the $1.3 billion, but there is obviously still a chance in a world out there, especially when there's not a lot of competition, at least for the next 2 weeks, and we're about to enter into January, which is where films go to die financially, that this film could make a lot more than what we are expecting. We'll know by the third weekend about just how close and how it is tracking in comparison to other films, but yeah, let me know your thoughts about this in the comment section below. Like this video, smash the like button, give me a subscribe, it helps me out a lot. Also, right now, the nominations for the Wednesday Raven Awards are live, and if you want to go ahead and vote, you just go to ombreviews.home.blog, and there's a link to it right here, and you'll get this ballot, and go ahead and take your time with it. There's a lot of categories that you can nominate films and people for. Some is MPC of the Year, Best Animated Film of 2019, Best Stunt Work for Movie 2019, because unlike at the Oscars, which we are boycotting once again this year for the second annual awards, we are going to honor the stunt work and the stunt teams that work on films, because that is just something that they deserve. Anyway, let me know your thoughts about it and all the things talked about in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash the like button, give us a subscribe. It helps us out a lot. You're all amazing, beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.